Most companies have spent years buying tools, running pilots, and building dashboards, and they still can't answer the questions leadership needs answered. The problem isn't the technology, it's that no one fixed the foundation first: ownership, governance, alignment. The unglamorous work that determines whether your data becomes infrastructure or an expensive spectacle. Today's guest has made a career out of doing exactly that work and built a company around it. Welcome to Data Science with Sam. This is Sam, your podcast host. Today, my guest is Ilan Man, founder and CEO of Paradox Missions, a data and AI consultancy incubated through the Infinity Venture Studio in New York. Ilan has built and scaled data functions at high-growth companies across multiple industries, including an exited consultancy, and Paradox Machines exist because he kept seeing the same problems repeat. Ilan, welcome to the show. I'm very happy to have you here. I'm looking forward to an intriguing conversation.
Thanks, Sam. Very happy to be here, and I'm also looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. So let's start with the origin, because the founding story here is rooted in a specific frustration most data leaders will recognize immediately. And I'm pretty sure my listeners over here who are data and enterprise leader look forward to hear your journey. So my first question to you that what is the specific moment or pattern that finally convinced you to build the company Paradox Mission, which you wished existed rather than take another data leadership role inside someone else's company?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a few parts there. There's the opportunity that I saw, and there's my own intrinsic motivation. The opportunity, there's a big timing play. I had left the company. I was consulting, so I was kind of a free agent in a way. So it was a lot, and I don't know if folks listening have consulted before. I'm a big believer and a big fan of kind of going on your own for a little bit and kind of exploring. Part of the appeal to me was I was listening for things. I was meeting a lot of people. I was open to new ideas and new opportunities in a way that when you're an employee at a company, you're just not as open to, because you don't need to be. And so was listening for what people were building in AI and data, trying to piece together some of the kind of pieces of the puzzle. And with that, along with the rise of AI, which I don't know, last year was, I guess, at that point, like 2+ years old in its modern form, I found myself really wanting to dive in deeper into that space, and not necessarily from the sidelines of another company, but actually kind of doing something from scratch. AI makes it easier to start a company, makes it easier to ship products. There's a lot more demand for AI, whether or not companies know what the heck it is or what it is that you're selling. They're very interested, and they want to be part of the conversation. One of the things that I found was there's a lot of people doing AI and consulting in AI. I didn't see that many like actual practitioners. I think the true practitioners are probably, at least the ones that I found, were in the research labs in companies doing kind of cutting edge AI research. But those folks that were consulting or running their own shops, they were new to me. They weren't people like in my circle, So I saw an opening for folks with a data background, understanding that data is fundamental to AI succeeding, not just saying those words, because I think everybody says, oh, AI is very critical, data is very critical. And everybody's like, yeah, sure, of course. But what are you doing about it? And when you dig a little deeper, you realize that a lot of folks didn't really have a great data story. They may have a great automation and AI story, but not a great data story. So I thought there was an opportunity there. And then on the personal side, I had never started a company before. I thought it would be super fun. Based on my experience as a professional for a long time, wearing a lot of hats, a lot in the data space, but in a lot of different companies, I thought that I was well positioned to both start and execute an organization.
Love that. Thanks, Ilan. There's a great way of starting up this conversation. And like you mentioned, Like a lot of people talking about the data is still an essential oil, even in this AI era, but nobody's doing anything. Like very few people, they're taking the step like you to build a data infrastructure or something that's gonna empower the AI layers sitting on top of it. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. I'm pretty sure some of my listeners are very interested to know more about Paradox Machines. And I would definitely encourage you to see the podcast notes where I share details about this company. Now, moving on to the next question, which I would say more of like a little bit of I would say the talent gap thing, because we started seeing that there are a lot of talent model emerging. We're seeing prompt engineering. We're seeing new roles are getting generated because of this, Gen AI era. So let's talk about the talent model, because I feel like this is where Paradox Machines makes a structural bet that differs from both traditional consulting and staff augmentation. So to that purpose, my question to you is that what does that model get right that traditional approaches consistently get wrong? Like if you can take a step back and kind of like walk us through the thought process about that talent model, and then, just share a little bit of details for my listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to unpack there. A little bit of context on Paradox, because that's going to inform the answer. Paradox is like a Palantir for mid-market SMB companies. So we have data engineers and heads of data as your outsourced data team, and we have a data platform. So those two combined is very unique in the market, targeted at mid-market companies, mid-sized companies. In the past, it was just so expensive to build a data platform. You'd have to raise a lot of venture funding. You'd have to hire a bunch of software and data engineers to piece it together. Oftentimes, they're sold as SaaS, so you have to sell at like pretty high volume to kind of recoup your money, and that would be a many year journey that a lot of companies went on in the 2017, 2018, 2019 era to various degrees of success. So that was one model. And of course, and when you go up market, you have like the big players like this Databricks and the Snowflakes of the world, of course. On the other end, you have services. There's a lot of consultancies out there at the upper end with the Accentures and Deloittes of the world, and then the boutiques and then the solo shops. They're all providing services. Some of them say that they have some tech. Historically, they definitely did not have very meaningful tech. On the whole, there are some exceptions like Palantir, for example. What AI enables you to do now is build the tech much faster and cheaper than you needed before. And because there has been this wave, this modern data stack wave of really good starting open source and then moving to managed service technologies, the bones of a data platform are there. Really good technology, really good integration layers, transformation layers, storage and compute layers, orchestration layers. So all the ingredients that you would need out of a data platform are there. And the talent has started to catch up because it's no longer, in 2017, 18, 19, it was very nascent. Analytics engineering, cloud data warehousing, it was kind of coming up. Now, 5, 6 years removed from that, there's a lot more maturity in the market. Coupled with AI and open source frameworks, you can build these platforms much faster. The challenge is anybody can do it in a weekend, but now it's just a toy project. It's a thing that they've open sourced, and here's your data team in a box. I vibe coded something over the weekend. Anybody who's built software or work in production scale systems understands that it's just not going to work. It's going to fail as soon as you deploy it across different customers, as soon as your latency requirements change, as soon as you have errors in the pipeline and you don't have proactive alerting, as soon as the business evolves and your data models need to evolve with the business, and you realize that this toy project that you had on the weekend just doesn't work. So the technology is no longer the barrier or the cost of building the technology. It is the expertise. The expertise coupled with the technology itself enabled by AI and then deployed at your customers so that you can see how it works, because otherwise it's just a shiny object. That combination of things is what we're bringing to the table. And that, as far as I can tell, is rare in the market. there are companies that are starting to do this more and more, small shops that are building their own technology with AI and then deploying that. I don't think that's happening at scale, and I don't think it's happening for the mid-market. So the talent gap that you referenced early on, that's what I'm seeing at small organizations that can't afford data engineers. They can't afford heads of data. They can't afford Snowflake and Fivetran and Tableau and all of the stuff that you need to enable your analytics. They look across and they say, I'm $500,000 into this investment. What am I getting out of it? Actually, I'm not too sure. 3 or 4 months later, they find their data engineer leaves because they're bored, right? Because you're not a data company. You don't need at your scale a data team and data technologies. That said, you need reporting. You want analytics. You want to participate in the game because you hear your competitors are. So what I'm trying to do is democratize. It sounds a little cheesy, but it's true. I want to democratize data and AI for companies that can't otherwise afford it because it actually is affordable now if you know what you're doing. That said, these small businesses, it's not that they don't know what they're doing. It's just that data and analytics is not their competency. So I don't believe that they at the early stage need to invest in that to the degree that they had to before. So that's kind of what gets me excited. That's part of the talent gap that I'm seeing. As the companies get bigger, that's different. When they hit Series B, C, D, as they're raising more money, it might make sense to bring in full-time staff. But I just think that there's a huge swath of smaller companies that don't need it.
Yeah, totally agree with you. I mean, as someone myself been in the data analytics area for around 15 years, I've seen that people are talking about AI readiness, but not many people are talking about data analytics or data readiness. And I think that's where we need to kind of like find that a way to bridge the gap. And I feel like this is something technology cannot just solve that issue by itself. You need human expert. You need people and the perfect spot where they can either using Paradox machine services or using their own proprietary services to bridge the gap to make sure the data is there, which is essential to power their AI readiness platform. And I feel like the way the AI is actually pacing, like, just going exponentially, with this gap will, expand better, like this talent gap. Because I don't think so we are producing as many as data talents in the same rate the AI is moving further. And I think that's where probably your company will come in and provide the services, especially to the small to mid-size level companies where they don't have to invest a lot to hire full-time talents and stuff to bridge the gap. Rather, they can, get the services. Let me know, did I get it correctly? Especially for my listeners, I want to make sure that they have a clear understanding of your company's services. I know.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And the last thing that'll add to this, that there's a lot of confusion with data and AI these days. I'd say AI more than data. Everybody's always confused with data. That's not new. There's a lot of confusion with AI these days. One of the things that especially the model providers are selling is just this notion that you can MCP your data into like ChatGPT or Claude, and therefore you don't need to invest in cleaning your data or structuring it or organizing it or adding context because the AI will just do it for you. Just MCP into it and you get your
Exactly.
HubSpot, your Shopify. And it turns out it doesn't, I've met 0 people who've done that and said, great, I have my data strategy now. Everything works. I got all my data in one place and now I can ask Claude to, make me a sales forecast or tell me about my customers and who I should market to. So all these business questions, it's not as simple as just pipe in your data. You need to understand it and clean it and model it and evolve it for the different use cases within your organization. So when I talk about talent gap, I'm not necessarily talking about data engineers that can get data from A to B. You need that, but that is not that's necessary. It's no longer sufficient. And I caution organizations that get lulled into the marketing speak of the frontier models that say, oh, we, or partners that say, hey, we have an MCP, just MCP into our SaaS platform and skip the data engineers or skip the data team because now you have, it's like, nah, I mean, experiment. You should go nuts, but don't think that is the end of the story. There's a lot more to it than that. So it's just something that I often have to tell companies.
Yep. No, thanks, Ilan. So for my listeners, the bottom line is that most companies that say we need to get AI into our data stack are actually 3 steps back from the point where AI can add value. And skipping those steps makes the AI worse, not better. So keep that in mind. So that
Yep.
brings me to my next question. So you identified a specific failure mode, like dashboards and analytics exist, but they rarely drive real operational or strategic decisions. And this is a human or organizational problem, not a technical one. How do you actually solve it? And what's the difference between a data system that informs decisions and one that just reports what happened?
So it's like the $1 million question, right? If I
Yeah.
had the answer, I'd be
I mean, we are still struggling to find it out, right? Even, since the inception of data analytics and all stuff, right?
yeah, exactly. So I'm not going to say that I have the answer and that I'll share in the next 4.5 minutes but I have a couple thoughts based on my experience doing this for almost 2 decades. The way that I think about it, one framing is top down and bottom up. So the top down is executive conviction behind data and analytics, not just saying that they want to be data driven, but actually believing in it and investing in it. Ultimately, it comes down to dollars invested. Everybody, and I appreciate everybody's trying to be very scrappy and making a dollar, kind of like stretching it. And I get that. And you should ask for ROI and all the rest of it. But there needs to be a belief, a conviction that data is important. It's going to, add to our competitive advantage in some way. Even if I don't exactly know how, I'm going to invest in, for example, hiring a leader or invest in a partner to help me with my strategy. I'm going to get support from my board or the rest of the C-suite. But I want everybody to be focused on data, on metrics to drive the stories within the company. If you don't have that, nothing else actually matters, in my opinion. So you need that. That's, again, necessary but not sufficient. Then there's the bottom up story. The bottom up story is I believe that there's a lot of serendipity in data and analytics that you can schedule like an assembly line kind of widgets of data insights to come out. The more data you have, the more analytics there are, the more dashboards. I mean, you can do that up to a point. That I think is like helpful for some categories of problems where you're optimizing on the margins, you're running A/B tests and you're doing this kind of stuff. I think that's good. But there's also the serendipity, the give not data people, but business owners or kind of the maybe like the middle managers, the product managers, the marketing managers, the sales folks, give them access to data and have them create their own reports, do their own analytics. It's a bit of a governance nightmare, but that's okay. That's the job of the data team to like manage the data team and the business, frankly, to manage the governance. But you want some unstructuredness, right? So another mental model, especially for your audience that's more technical, if you think about like a multi-arm bandit approach, right? There's like one of the foundational ways to do it is like this epsilon greedy approach, right? Without getting too weedy into the details, is you have some structured amount of like direction towards a goal and then some amount of randomness where you just let the machine do its thing. And I really believe in that. That type of a model is actually a mental model that I think is quite powerful in many domains, but especially in data. So you have goal directed. Here are KPIs. Here's what we're going to do about it. Here are goals. Here's our milestones. Here's the project management structure. It's very structured. It's good. It's fine. And there's a bit of randomness. Here's some exercise. Here's some like fishing expeditions we're going to go on. Here's some spikes in kind of agile terms. Here's some research we're going to time boxed. You need people accountable. This is not like an R&D lab, but you do want a little bit of that randomness of people just like figuring things out and seeing where there's anomalies and playing with the data, empowering them, even if they're not data people. Because actually at a company, everybody's a data person. in some respects. The data team needs to enable the business to do that exploration easily and quickly, and then act as their partner, not to say, oh, that's wrong, or oh, that data is bad, or oh, how could you produce this report, but more, okay, how can we create an environment that enables you to add value to your business, achieve your KPIs, find new opportunities in a way that's safe and guarded as a partner. That part's hard. That's a cultural shift. But if you can get there, and yeah, 99% of those experiments are going to fail, but you don't need that many to win. You just need a few. Here's a new region that we should be investing in. Here's a new product line that I think we should be exploring. Here's a new marketing channel that we've been underinvesting in. Those are big, like, changes to the business, not like small incremental ones. So you need both. The small incremental A/B tests on what's the best user flow, where users dropping out the funnel, and the big bets of like, where are we going to invest, the future of our company. And it's not, to be clear, I don't think like whatever the data says is the be all end all. It should be directional, and it should help foster an interesting conversation among people. And through those conversations and intuition building, coupled with your knowledge of the market, coupled with your knowledge of your customers, that is how I think companies win. And again, like, those conversations will just not happen without executive support for shoring up data, shoring up the team, the technology, and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
No, totally makes sense. Thanks, Ilan. Speaking of the executive support, that kind of brings me to my next question, which related to the founder's paradox. And I'm pretty sure you will love this question. Since you have been a hands-on practitioner and a strategic leader, like, most data consultancies are either execution shops or strategy shops. But Paradox Machines claims to be both. How do you maintain that balance at scale, and what breaks first when data companies try to combine strategic rigor with deep implementation? Think about from both technical and strategic perspective, since you serve both the roles really well.
It's a great question. Part of why it's a great question is something that I grapple with all the time. I mean, how are we going to scale what we're doing? I'm happy to not. I'm confident that there is no playbook for it. So I would love to be part of building it. So we do both. We do, and when I say strategy, I mean architectural design of a system. I think about data and AI strategy for an organization, and that's kind of like people, process, and technology as one very common framework. That's also partnership, both advisory. It could be fractional leadership. So there's many different flavors of what quote unquote strategy is. It's a very big bucket. And we do all of the above. That is a very similar, that's an adjacent but different skill set to implementation, which traditionally is hands-on keyboard, right? Writing code in the software space. But they're very, I believe that the best companies are those that can do both. The best people are those that can do both. And that's how we're operating as an organization, at least in our current form. And to be clear, we have not hit quote unquote scale yet. We're a team of 5, half a dozen customers, with a pipeline that's growing every day, which is great. So we're not at scale yet, but we're starting to get to the point where we need to think about either specialization or clear boundaries around roles. For now, we the way that I'm organizing the company, the way that I'm designing it, is having a small number of very senior level operators, engineers, and kind of implementation specialists. So everybody wears multiple hats. We are still a startup. And I believe that if you can do the strategy and architecture well, and you can do the implementation, the hands-on keyboard well, then you get the kind of the 1 + 1 = 3. You can do a lot more. You're more vertically integrated, right? So you understand the context that the customer wants. You understand how to design the systems to get there. And then you can, that's on one side. On the other side, you can then, open up an IDE or something and start writing code and building apps and building pipelines and technologies and deploying the platform. And then you can iterate much faster. There's less of a handoff. So I actually think with AI, it enables folks to be able to do strategy faster because we could spend more time on the deeper concepts and the relationship building with our customers and less time on building decks and, Gantt charts. And with AI, you can code faster and you could iterate faster. Again, this all assumes that you know what you're doing. And I can't underscore that enough because it's lost all of the time when people say, oh, you can vibe code a platform, you can vibe code a thing. It's like, you can vibe code it, but I would never trust it. So that's why I go back to a small senior team. And that way we can have people doing more, partnering together, and it enables each individual to be able to kind of output faster and better, and also of deeper quality. So you're not doing handoffs from like a strategy team to an implementation team. Things are lost in translation. We can minimize the context switching, which is a real problem in consultancies because you're trying to overload people with more stuff. When you do one customer or two customers, but you do top to bottom, yeah, the context switches from I'm doing strategy to I'm writing code, but it's within the same customer. It's with the same client. So it's a different type of context switching than I'm across 5 different customers, one code base to the other code base to the other code base. That is a type of context switching that I think is much harder to scale. And that's where you see kind of linear growth for traditional consultancies versus more fully integrated. So that type of context switching, I think, is much easier and frankly more rewarding for people. And so I think what we're going to find, and we'll know this in the next year or two of growth, is we'll have lower attrition rates, we'll have higher quality of life. I think the engineers are going to be more satisfied because they understand the business context, they have relationships, and they write the code and develop the products. That's what I'm excited to do. And it stretches them because of what I'm finding from engineers in general is they don't want to be relegated to just writing code. They understand that that's getting commoditized away. So a lot of the best engineers that I work with, and they're on my team, what I'm finding is that the best ones want to add value, be kind of quote unquote irreplaceable, really stretch their own skills. And that's what I'm trying to do with this kind of like vertically integrated person. Did that help answer the question?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I'm pretty sure our listeners also going to resonate some of the thoughts that you shared in this question. And yeah, definitely. And actually, that's kind of like brings me to, I would say, the last but not the least question. The market is shifting fast, as we all know that, especially AI agents are beginning to consume and act on structured data directly. Foundation models are commoditizing some analytical work, and the definition of data infrastructure is really expanding. So, to that, keeping that in mind, where does Paradox Machines or similar companies like them they sit in that landscape? Where do they stand right now, and which of the assumption that industry is making right now about data and AI do you think are going to age, or the one going to kind of expand further in future? I know we do not have a crystal ball, but just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that where do you think these paradox machines and companies like that going to position themselves in the intersection of data and AI in future?
Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously, something I think about a lot, and it is changing so fast. So a prediction that I had 12 months ago probably aged like cheese. So a couple of things that I believe, and this is very timely. This question. So we're talking Monday, July 6th. Last week, Alex Karp went on CNBC Squawk Box and had a whole thing about the Frontier Labs. And right before that, Palantir, the company that he's a CEO of, posted this kind of manifesto on AI sovereignty. And that dovetails really nicely to your question. I think sovereignty is going to be a real thing. I think it is a real thing. I think it's going to continue to be a real thing as people realize that a lot of the frontier labs, they are I mean, I don't know that they're necessarily training your replacement with an agent. I don't think that they would lose a lot of sleep if that were the case, but I think that people do need to grapple with the fact that these agents are getting smarter and better every single, release, that So that's one thing. Another thing is not just that that's happening, but that the market believes it to be true. So the market kind of wills it into existence, you know? So even if AI is not ready for certain tasks, if enough companies just say it, like AI is going to do X, and they all agree tacitly that AI is going to do X, well, then AI is going to do X, at least for a short period of time. So you just have to grapple with the fact that it's happening. The other thing that I think about a lot, obviously, is data. So the data, I believe, because it is so custom to every company, as long as you have what I would call data sovereignty to play off AI sovereignty, which is not just data retention, which is what the X post was about, data retention, but it's about governance and security and fit for purpose and how data iterates with your changing business model and how you have to keep it up to date. That changing nature of data, which is going to be very context dependent, that is one of the few things I think that the AI labs are going to be able to commoditize next. I think application layer gets commoditized in certain respects. There will still be a few winners, but like a long tail of people that won't be able to build durable products and businesses. But I think data will continue to outlast it all because it's just so different and it changes and it's messy in ways that it's so hard for agents to just kind of quote unquote fix. So I believe the data is going to be important. I believe that's why Paradox Machines, we are a data company, data infrastructure company first. We are very opinionated on the pipelines and the data sets and how that matches your ontology. That should matter to you as a company. How you visualize it, where you send the data and all the rest of it. I think that is changing all the time. But owning your data, managing it, governing it, securing it, controlling it, that's going to be one of the last things to go. And I think if I was starting a company or part of a company right now in which data was important, even if I wasn't using it, I should be using it better. And I should make sure that I can control my own destiny by controlling my data.
Love that. Thank you. Thank you, Ilan. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And I do feel like this conversation was very practical, especially with a lot of thoughtful insights from you. And I believe my listeners were able to find this episode more of a balance between technical and strategic thought process, which kind of resonated with your expertise as well. And thank you for building this kind of company like Paradox Machines that's going to serve so much value to the data and AI community in general. Before I wrap up this episode, I would like to ask you that if my listener would like to reach out to you, want to continue this conversation or want to know more about Paradox Machines, how do they find you?
Yeah, the best way is on my LinkedIn, which I'm sure you can drop in the show notes. But I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. And then via email, elon@paradoxmachines.com. You can find me there. And if any of your listeners are cyclists or runners, I'm on Strava. So you can follow me and I'll follow you. And I promise to like all of your runs and all of your rides on Strava. So thanks for that. And thanks, Sam. This was a really fun conversation. And I hope your listeners enjoy it. And yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming over. And to my listeners, if this episode resonated, share it with whoever in your organization is still trying to ship an AI project on top of broken foundations. I'm Sam Dev. Subscribe to Data Science with Sam on YouTube, Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. I'll see you in the next chapter. Thank you.
Bye.